Somehow, the anime industry has evolved to the point where new animation studios sprout up like mushrooms, are able to create a show out of basically any sport, hobby, or other activity, while paying the creators of these shows next to nothing. How this model is sustainable, I have no idea, but I do know something about climbing. So let's take a look at the first episode of Iwa Kakeru, Sports Climbing Girls. We open on a moving shot of a climbing wall, focusing in on a lady and hear a voiceover explain. This immediately introduces you to the sport and gives you one of the reasons of why it's so fun to do. A wider shot shows that this is a climbing competition. The commentator partially explains what is going on here, which I think is useful for a viewer who doesn't know anything about climbing. I say partially because it could do a better job, but to be fair to the first episode, we're only a few sentences in, and what the commentator says is exposition that fits the scene. Before we go further, let's explore a few different ways of climbing that will be featured in this episode, and then look at what is happening in this scene. What we're seeing here is what the show will be calling bouldering, where you climb a set route without rope. Depending on the difficulty, it might take you a few tries to climb a certain route. We'll get into the grading of this difficulty later. Another version of climbing is similar, but features a rope and someone on the ground controlling that rope. The third version we will hear mentioned is speed. You simply climb a route as fast as possible and your performance is timed. Back to the scene, we see the first version. In this case, the participant probably did not get to see the route beforehand. When her match started, she got a certain amount of time to figure out how to scale the wall and reach the end with both hands. This allows you to try a few things out while balancing the exhaustion that you will start to feel in your muscles. The downside of climbing in this way, besides being able to fall and break everything, is that your entire body will tire quickly, meaning you don't have unlimited tries in that allotted time. This is all stuff that is going on behind the scenes, by the way. Nothing about this is explained in the show yet. While she finishes the route, which I think is shown in a weird angle, the voiceover explains the fun of the sport, mainly solving the puzzle and getting toward a goal, which I agree with. That is the best part. I'm not too fond of how they animated this though. They didn't show her climbing the entire route, which I think would have been helpful for people new to the sport. It would have been a great opportunity to show off some great animation as well. As it stands, it is confusing. We don't see how she clears every obstacle, which, as the voiceover also explained, is part of the fun. We didn't see the puzzle get solved either, but we did see her clear the goal, albeit in a strange way that I will get to soon. So out of the 3 things the voiceover stated is cool about the sport, you failed to show 2 of them. You also failed to mention a ton of other cool things, but I will give you a few more minutes to clear that up. Now, what makes the animation stand in the way of understanding the sport is that we don't see how she is actually holding the end. We get a weird angle from behind the wall, so it is hard to place all the holds in perspective based on the other shots. Her feet seem to be dangling in the air, but could be standing on something for support, which then brings us to the hands, because they have to do all the work if the feet do nothing. One of the challenges when climbing is that ending. It could be a hold that is very hard to hold with both hands, meaning you need good foot support. It could also be an amazing hold for your hands without any foot support. Or it could be a variation in between. The added challenge is then to position your body in such a way that you can stably hold that end hold with 2 hands. That too is part of solving the puzzle, but because of this bad shot, it isn't shown to us. Konomi is introduced as the next climber, who we will soon learn is the main protagonist of this series. We see a girl running for a few seconds before it cuts to a high school. Because both have short purple hair and it's not very clear, the position of these 2 scenes back to back might make you believe that these are the same people, but they're not. It makes you wonder why they showed this in the first place. The only difference is the hair clip and the eye color, but I'm not sure it's enough to distinguish them, especially when the cuts are so fast. The girl in school explains to herself that she doesn't have a club yet, and most people probably already have. She just doesn't know what to choose. As she thinks this decision over, she gets scared by an energetic running team. I don't know what their problem is, but if your sport requires you to shout numbers all the time, you might want to do something else. That's my way of saying I don't think the show does a good job of explaining why she should not want to join this sports team. We get one shot of a group of running, shouting weirdos, and that is supposed to A, be believable, and B, enough to make us agree she doesn't want to join that team. The problem is, who would? Why don't you take a few more seconds to make this a little more meaningful? Let's say she tries it out for a day, no shouting. We see her interacting with the rest of the team, get to know her a little, and immediately establish a reason based on her personality or the group for her not to want to join. Quick, lazy scenes like this make me immediately worried for the rest of the writing. Just as the title of the episode comes up, a climbing wall is revealed in front of her. As title cards go, it is a decent reveal, I think. It's the introduction to the sport for her and for the audience, on top of being used to show the title. She's enthused by the wall and wants to touch it, but someone tells her off. Only members can touch the wall. For safety reasons, this makes sense, but she could try not being a bitch about it. The sign even has a little heart on it, meaning this plank is nicer than this girl. The first good look we get at this second character is a bizarre animation choice as well. She's introduced with a panning shot from bottom to top, but considering the placement of both people, this is from the perspective of the main character, which means that the first time that first girl met second girl, she decided to scan her bottom to top. That makes no sense, because most people look at the face of a person first and then might scan someone top to bottom. And besides, they don't do this that slowly either, because that would be creepy. What I'm trying to prove here is that the way this is shown and edited says something about the main character and or the target audience, and it doesn't work with what the show wants you to think about her. It's another red flag. After second girl brushes a hold to get rid of excess chalk, she notices that the first girl is still interested. She asks this, and without waiting for an answer, she drags her along. The hard cut to first girl in sports gear, ready to go, and stumbling over words is obviously meant to be comedic, which is pretty decent as a joke. It tells us something about second girl, that even though she started out hostile, she quickly switched to direct and pushy, but not unfriendly. She might want to get a new member for the club and seems to only be focused on climbing. She quickly explains the 3 versions we went over, which is our second dose of exposition. This is the advantage of a character that knows nothing. You have an explanation as to why this character will now give an explanation. A good show might try to use this time to also get something about the characters across, but that's a little too much for this show. She tells our main character to try and climb these, but she hasn't explained what the colors mean at all. In some cases, the colors correspond to a grade, while other climbing places might use a different way of showing the grade. It's also quite useful to explain that you should start with a simple route and only use one specific color. In any case, she's enjoying the climb and tries to jump to a hold out of reach. Aside from the fact that she should probably wear a different shirt, this actually shows a little character. She has no fear at all. The first time you start climbing, even if you don't fear heights, it's very unlikely you trust your body enough to attempt a jump like that. You might not even know how to deal with a fall, which, by the way, is something she should have explained before climbing, but whatever. Second girl then starts explaining the move she just did, and here's where I'm going to skip certain stuff. I am not going to explain all climbing jargon because A, I think it's useless most of the time, so B, it wastes time, which means C, that stupid scenes like this waste time as well. First, we get to see her performing a move. Then second girl asks, "Did you just do said move?" To which the first girl confusingly asks, "Wait, what?" To which the second girl responds by explaining what she just did. How about you cut all that out and just show this second girl be surprised, preferably in between when we see the first girl jump, miss the hold, and fall. It would be enough to know for us that what she did was kind of daring and unusual, and we would believe it because the person observing is obviously an experienced climber. That would save us a lot of time. Instead, we have to hear a person dryly explain a part of the sport, which is going to happen a lot in this show, and the same problems apply every time it comes up. So, I've picked a conversation like this apart, but will not do that for all the ones that are coming up. I'll just mention it whenever it happens. But, just to be clear, I'll give you 3 points that I think exposition should pass to qualify as good, or at least something approaching decent. And tons of dialogue scenes in first episodes fail at least one of the coming 3. 1. You are an animated medium. You should communicate using animation and or dialogue. Not one, then the other. And preferably not dialogue of shit we just saw in animation, only longer and more stupid. 2. You should use exposition scenes to communicate something about the characters to the audience as well. And 3. You should ensure that the explanation at least makes sense for someone to say and someone to hear. You could be graceful and say this scene succeeds on point 3, but we can at least agree that it utterly fails checks 1 and 2. It's not clear if she's bitter, but she's certainly not encouraging the new girl when she says that the jump is an advanced move that beginners could never pull off. This is kind of a dick move, but it's not even true. Firstly, it totally depends on the jump. Some can be cleared by beginners. Secondly, almost anyone I meet while climbing is actually very positive and encouraging, especially when you try something difficult. This reaction just doesn't happen. But I mean, you could steelman the show and say that this is part of her character, that she's just a bit of a hard ass and needs to warm up to people. Maybe, but in that case it still doesn't work well with why these people are here in the first place. Second girl dragged first girl here, so you obviously want her to find fun in the sport, right? You can totally write a character that's cold toward new people, but they wouldn't just say something to actively discourage you from trying to climb again. Even if you take a sport very seriously, as we will learn that she does, you want other people to do the same, or at least respect it. That's what the show will be trying to tell you is the big divide between these characters, but the order is wrong. Before the second girl gets annoyed about the bubbly attitude of the first girl, she was already using her dry explanation of the move and her tone to discourage her from trying it again. And the discouraging goes on, because she is told to only use the yellow hands, which is supposed to be a beginner route. We might have different definitions of the word beginner, but the holes I have climbed do not have those routes as beginner routes. The easiest ones are very accessible to climb for most people, which in turn makes the sport accessible as well. Funnily enough, by telling her to climb this, she is trying to do the opposite, claiming this one is easy and deliberately choosing this route, knowing she probably could not make it. First girl even apologizes to second girl for treating it like a game, which makes this scene even worse. First girl's mentality is totally fine, and it makes no sense to scold her for being enthusiastic after telling her to climb something she cannot do. Luckily for first girl, she's only gotten more intrigued by the sport, and unluckily for us, it will be shown in a way that makes no sense and looks awful. The wall changes into a disgustingly ugly 3D version and fills up with balls that pop when connected to the same color, like some shitty mobile game. We will get to hear the bad explanation for this later in another terribly done exposition scene, but let's stick with the info we have. This is not at all helpful for us to understand what is going on. The shitty mobile game doesn't correspond with how climbing works. There's a route of yellow balls that can be connected through the yellow holds that she tries to climb. Yes, well, obviously the route will be along the yellow holds, so this doesn't add any more info. What she's trying to do here is read the route, just as we saw at the beginning during the competition. You try it, you fail, you look back at the route again and wonder if you can do something differently to clear it. That something isn't as easy to pin down and depends on your body length, your strength, and your technique. I will show some real life examples later. For now, I hope you understand that these visuals don't add anything and are another missed opportunity where the animation could have been interesting and useful. Instead, we still have no idea what she will try to do to clear this route. During my complaining, girl 3 and 4 are introduced, who are wondering if they will only get one new member this year. At least this bland dialogue gets us up to speed quickly. There's 3 members. Second girl is probably the newest member because these two don't know about first girl yet. Sadly, the rest of their dialogue is again exposition that the character should know already, which means it's just for the audience, which means it's bad, and I've gone over why already. They basically tell each other that they started this club last year and were the only 2 members until the serious girl joined this year. They also literally explain her personality in case you're retarded yourself, but there's one good thing about this terrible exchange of lines. They show a little personality. All of the worries about the club and about June, yes, we finally get a name, come from the girl on the left. The girl on the right is not worried at all and just happy that an experienced climber joined their team. Another bonus of this dialogue being so terribly written is that they give us the names of these ladies, or at least the nicknames they have for each other, Nono and Sayo, who arrive at the scene. They are surprised to learn that first girl is a total beginner, and the dialogue makes clear that June is at least starting to come around. She even gave her helpful tips, but was probably less friendly than the piece of wood. The animation of the main girl climbing starts out promising, considering we see her perform an interesting move, which at least seems to fit the route as well. It doesn't show us how she continues from this position, sadly, which is where climbing would become interesting. You might need to place your feet in strange positions to allow your arms to pull your body in a specific direction, but the visuals don't explain this at all, because we only see the start of her move here, and a few seconds later, she's further on the route. More exposition explains a little more about the sport, which again could have been done better, but at least the captain explains something important. You don't need insane arm strength to do this sport. The way you hold the holds, shift your weight and position your feet is way more important. Sure, body strength will help, but it's not required to start climbing. The focus switches to our main character, who not only is having fun, but learning how to climb and thinking this for us to hear at the same time. This is at least useful exposition because it explains and shows something that will be impossible to know for viewers unfamiliar with climbing. You might only have to use the tips of your fingers to hold on to a hold, for example. And the same goes for your feet when just using your toes. The fun they stated at the beginning, working out the puzzle and clearing the goal, is what is translated here in both movement and thought. Don't get me wrong, this writing is not amazing or anything, but it's at least passable. But then our perspective shifts, and they ruin this scene again with those stupid faceballs. Aside from this, here's a little moment of cool animation that could have been throughout this whole episode to show how amazing climbing is. When she tries to jump, we finally get a well-animated shot, with a good realistic joke at the end as well. She jumps, grabs the hold, which is awesome, but the momentum of her jump will carry her forward, past the hold, meaning she will slip off, and that's exactly what happens. If this was the quality and clarity of the animation in every climbing shot, we could have had a decent show, but sadly, this is rare. And ruined by balls. Interestingly enough, she realizes something that a climber could have also noticed while watching this, which is another compliment to the animation. And it can totally happen while you're climbing in real life. After you fail, you notice a hold you missed and rethink your strategy. Just like she does here, because she realizes the jump wasn't needed. She immediately wants to go again, but gets some helpful advice from the captain to take a break in between attempts. Your body, mainly the muscles in your arms, will exhaust themselves way too quickly otherwise. Her tone and way of speaking is much kinder than June. In a better show, this could have been a nice juxtaposition to allow the viewer to get a sense of the differences in personality, but the way June is written and the way exposition is written in general just ruins that completely. I can finally stop calling them first and second girl because we get names aside from June. Well, I've already told you the name of the main character, it just has not come up since. Not in the show, and therefore not in my script. You might think it's mean of me to call them first and second girl, but think to yourself if you haven't seen the show. What was her name? Exactly. You probably forgot as well, just as I did when watching this for the first time. Anyway, Sayo, Nono, June and Konomi. My rant about Konomi's name is not really a criticism because it works as a decent joke in the show. Because a fun detail is that Konomi and June have been climbing for a while and didn't even introduce themselves to each other. In their own ways, they were so caught up in the climbing that it didn't cross their mind at all. Until Sayo and Nono did the introductions. Again, had this been written better, details like this could have allowed the viewer to pick up info about their personalities. Konomi explains the fun she had and compares climbing to playing a game, which triggers June, who gets way too upset over nothing. The reason this clash makes no sense is the context surrounding it. The show wants you to believe that Konomi is just happy to see climbing as a game, something fun to do, while June takes the sport way too seriously. The issue is that when Konomi is climbing, she is both having fun and taking it seriously, and someone who's experienced, like June, should pick up on that immediately. That means, while they have a different perspective on the sport, June should know that Konomi is not thinking about playing on the playground when using the word game. Konomi even says she wasn't implying that. But June doesn't listen and comes up with an insane proposition. If you want to join the team, you should beat me in a match. Nono already thinks that potential fourth member is gone, even though the captain already welcomed her to the team earlier. June pretends to make this a more even match by giving herself a handicap. Nono wants to stop them, but the captain lets this continue. Everyone who is watching this and has brain cells left will understand, based on the captain's reactions alone, that Konomi will obviously join the team. After this, we hear the stakes of the game, where this all falls apart. If June loses, she will quit the team. If Konomi loses, she cannot join it. Okay, it is weird how complicated it is to explain how stupid it is, so I hope you can all follow along if you haven't seen the show. Almost nothing here works. June is stupid for giving herself a losing condition that will destroy her sport, while giving the other person also a losing condition that will destroy their sport. Nono is too stupid to understand that both outcomes are therefore practically impossible, and the captain can overrule any decision made here anyway. So the stakes make no sense, are way too harsh and way too dumb. And Konomi is too stupid because she accepts even though she knows the stakes make no sense. The handicap June will give herself in order to make it more fair is never enough to even the skill gap between them anyway. Konami gets 2 extra minutes and the ability to see the route before June does. If the route is sufficiently difficult, an experienced climber will always beat a new climber. By a long shot. The captain reconfirms the stakes, even though we all know it won't play out like that, so the only one who's not that stupid is Sayo herself. She just plays along, knowing the probable outcome anyway. The viewer should know that outcome too, by the way, which makes this setup devoid of any tension. The stupidity of this gets more complicated as soon as June explains she will quit if she loses. Konami is shocked and tells her she shouldn't have to do that. But June responds, "What? Do you really think you can win?" Konami doesn't know what to say because this situation doesn't make sense. If you're going up against an experienced climber, it's totally normal to think you, the newbie, will lose. But it's also fair to not want someone to quit something they love doing simply because they lose to someone inexperienced, no matter how small of a chance that is. When Konami stumbles trying to say she doesn't really think she can win, June says she is not gonna race a girl who's not here to win, which is where we spiral down towards infinite stupid. You challenged someone to a race where the possibility of that someone winning is basically zero, to then give the match extreme stakes to the point where either outcomes are undesirable, and when the person who is being challenged points out those extreme stakes, you claim that they're not taking the race seriously enough, as if the stakes have to be this high in order for it to matter. But on top of that, you want the person being challenged to accept the challenge with the idea that they can win, which is contradictory to your own statement from before, where you said the person being challenged had no way of winning, which also means the extreme stakes you set for yourself don't matter. Everything is contradictory here, and it is all because the writers want to rush to a race, which should lead to some tension of who will be on the team later, all while showing us their clashing personalities. As I've hopefully explained, the only thing clashing here are the writers with themselves. Anyway, Konami accepts this bullshit and the race is on. She switches her feet on one of the first holds, which positively surprises Sayo and Nono. The cool thing about this when climbing is the context in which that switching of feet occurs, not just simply the switching itself. As we saw earlier, certain holds are only accessible when shifting your body a certain way. This means that her right foot had to be on that hold to get into the starting position, but to climb further she had to switch to her left foot. Depending on how well your hands are holding, this can be pretty easy or pretty difficult to do, and that's why these moves are so interesting. This episode should show why a move like this might be necessary, why you would do it, and why it's cool. At least the reactions of Sayo and Nono make sense. They explain that this is a basic move, but it is impressive that she has the basics down already. So, not only does the show fail in explaining the fun of the sport here, we don't see June make the same moves, which would have been a good time to show the audience the difference between climbing styles and experience. Sadly, we get a few quick images pretending to be animation, and the comment from Nono that she's fast. Both are a staple in anime. What is also a staple in anime is badly done backstories, which we now get 2 of. It is poor exposition as I've laid out before, so I'm just gonna run through it. As you might have guessed, June is serious about climbing and always has been, so her backstory explains what we have seen of her. Just one note, when she explains this to us, she literally says she kept getting better and better and had fun doing it. The same as your rival who just started yesterday, at whom you're somehow annoyed at having fun, trying to clear goals, getting better, just like you did and hopefully still do. This character just doesn't work. Konami's inner monologue at least starts with something reasonable. She too acknowledges the insanity of the stakes of the race here. You don't get any points for pointing out that the story you're in is badly written though. Her backstory is ass as well. She was a pro gamer until she realized that doing nothing but gaming will get you nowhere and studied hard to get into this high school. While that is true for most of us, the gaming part, I have to say that the show does a terrible job visualizing the enjoyment of puzzle games and the similar enjoyment you can get out of climbing. Nono gets excited and wants to climb too, which is just dialogue to waste our time. But interestingly enough, I would claim that the version they have chosen here shows the major downside of that climbing version. The person holding your rope cannot climb themselves. Therefore, bouldering is more fun. The people standing on the ground not being able to climb notice that Konami is taking the left route. They didn't bother showing us where that is or how it splits, and when they do, they use a different perspective and differently colored holds. They were all yellow before. What is going on? Now we still don't know what the split route actually is. This is all badly explained by more bad exposition that I will skip. The next surprising move is Konami using the side of the wall to scale up, which, to be fair, I didn't know was allowed in this category. The move itself, however, is more interesting and can be done while bouldering as well. She will be pulling herself up and to the left with her hands, while using one or both feet as a counter. It's cool to do yourself as well and can be learned quite quickly on easier routes. What makes this climbing part so difficult, but is hard to notice for people who don't know climbing, is the shift to the next hold. She has to keep pressure on her right foot, otherwise her arms will pull her to the left. Then she has to let go with the right hand, meaning the left has to do all the pulling. Then she has to stay stable while shifting her upper body, then grab the next hold with her right arm. Her inner thoughts are correct. That is the most difficult part. The animation is not too terrible here, but I think it is not clear enough for people new to the sport to understand what is actually involved here. You know, the likely goal of this series? There's more bad exposition from the captain, which we will skip so we can analyze more climbing. The perspective of this shot is not that great. So the next time we cut back to her, you might be confused as to why she's dangling from a hold with nowhere to support her feet. The idea of this part of the route is that the one she's holding is so high that she cannot use this one to stand on. This means, in order to get some body weight carried by your feet again, you need to get at least one of them to another hold quickly. And that's what she does. Pulling yourself up, which she will have to do to get to the next hold but isn't shown to us, is way easier if you can allow some of your weight to be carried by your feet. The next part is a series of lazy shots to show that it's a very close race, which just makes the race confusing. The show works best when you can clearly see the movement of the characters and the next holds they have to reach. But obviously that's way harder to animate than some overlapping still images. Their reactions when they both reach the end are pretty decent though, from a writing perspective. I mean, if you don't consider that this race is pointless and stupid. June is kind of disappointed because even though she won, she was almost beaten by someone who's not that experienced. And, from June's perspective at least, doesn't seem to take the sport seriously. Even though we've already explored why that's wrong. Besides that, she's not that tired from climbing this route. Konami, on the other hand, is happy, exhausted and probably amazed at what she just accomplished, but did lose. Climbing is totally the kind of sport where you can be amazed at what your body can do if you set your mind to it, and that's captured quite well here. And it's just communicated through their facial expressions. The pointlessness of the stakes is finally acknowledged by the last person, June herself, who tells Konami to work on her skills and join the team so they can race again later. The captain already knew this would happen and apologizes for June's little hazing ritual. When she asks about Konami's prior experience, we do learn that her flexibility came from when she did ballet. Other sports can absolutely help you when climbing, be it flexibility, strength or fitness, so that at least makes sense. She joins the team, she will have a match tomorrow, she is surprised, the end. So, what have we learned? Well, the show tries to convince you about how fun the sport can be, but fails on that front because they do not animate this well enough to learn the sport. The dialogue is either too obvious, pointless, or dry to help with understanding the sport. It further tries to convince you that these four girls have personalities, but the downside of bad exposition is that you risk your characters coming off as one-dimensional, which is exactly what has happened here. Through poorly written and painfully obvious dialogue, we learn that one is a gamer trying to have fun, one is a hard-ass taking climbing too seriously, one is the most mature and also the captain. One is a girl trying to look cool and collected in front of first-year high school students. It tries to convince you that the moment of tension during the race is because of these personalities that clash, but as I have explained, June, the more experienced climber, should already have picked up on the fact that you can have fun and take the sport seriously, especially because she said so about herself when explaining her own backstory to herself. Lastly, it tries to convince you that these two aspects, the climbing and the four girls, are enough to keep you watching, which it is not. So instead of watching the rest of this series, allow me to try to convince you how awesome climbing is. Hey, maybe some of you watching might want to try it out yourself. Aside from the before mentioned advantages, climbing is a sport where your brain and your entire body have to work together, especially on the more difficult routes. You first try to imagine a way up with the starting hold you get for your hands. Then, with gravity and therefore your own body weight as your biggest enemy, you try to use your brain to make your body do amazing things, dividing the force as best as possible over 4, 3, 2 or 1 limbs while getting to the next hold takes finger, hand, arm, shoulder, core and leg strength, all of which have to be coordinated by the brain. Another enemy might be that same brain, which is already envisioning different scenarios for you to fall well before it happens. If you're like me, the fear of heights doesn't help with that. Overcoming your fears is therefore, for some people at least, an amazing side project to work on. Now to explain how the sport works, the grading system and some examples of different climbing routes. I will show you the 3 routes I will be climbing already, so you can try to think about how to climb these before I explain it. The most basic way of climbing is to start with both hands on the designated starting holds, use only one color and finish the route by getting 2 hands on the end hold. If you finish a route, it's best to climb down. And then the benefit of that is that your muscles have to work harder and do different work when climbing down, meaning your body will improve more quickly as well. The show decided not to explain this in episode 1 and sometimes intrigue you with some random numbers instead, but I'm not sure that was the best idea. It means you have no concept of what Konami has to climb in the beginning of the episode, which means you don't get the stakes in this small interpersonal conflict when June deliberately told her to climb a more difficult route. Climbing holes have different ways of showing the difficulty, and to make it more confusing, there are multiple national grading systems as well, all with their own illogical numbers and letters. Considering that the show poorly used America's system and I am used to the French system, I will give you the grades of these routes in both numbers. You can ignore the numbers in this climbing hall. The first few grades can basically be climbed by most people, and that's what makes the sport so accessible to begin with. The first route I will show you is about a 2 or a 3. As you can see in the grading system, easier routes are sometimes hard to designate or even split up into smaller sublevels, and even people climbing the same route can rate them slightly differently. A 3 is often a route that can be climbed by most beginners, but will require some move or some form of physical strength or coordination that you're not quite used to performing. Technique isn't too important yet, and much can be compensated by raw body strength. Although it's good to start practicing technique as soon as possible, you'll need it to tackle the more difficult routes. The 5 that I will show you is a more difficult route that does start to require some technique and fitness. The last one is a 6B or a 6B plus, depending on who you ask, which is my current max. From this point on, anything is asked of your body. You will see what I mean later. The routes are conveniently colored yellow, red and blue. You can see gray elements, which may be used at all times for all routes, and they will be needed. All these routes are short in terms of height, but they can be much higher. It might seem like shorter routes are therefore more easy to climb because you tire out less quickly while finishing a route, but you will often find that a short route with the same grade as a long route will require more in other aspects. This could be creative or unconventional movement, better body coordination, or simply more body strength. For this video, a shorter route is also just easier to film. The yellow route consists of very easy to grab holds, which will be useful for both your hands and your feet. Combined with the gray elements, you can climb this route in tons of different ways, even skipping many of the holds. It starts off intuitively, with a convenient gray element big enough for both feet. Considering we're going right, I choose to switch my weight to my left foot and get my right one higher up. From that point on, the route works like a staircase until this swing. You have to pass a corner and pull or push yourself up to grab the next hold. This is slightly more complicated, meaning you could grade this route a little higher than a 1. From there you have enough options to grab the end hold. The red route starts off quite comfortably as well, with a good and big starting hold. You cannot see it from this angle, but there is another small red hole to the right where you can place your right foot. That does mean, however, that my legs are quite spread out, meaning I cannot use them to push myself up. That leaves my arms with most of the work. The gray elements are more awkward to hold than the yellow and red holds, but their sharp edges are enough to pull myself up. Because the elements are triangles, you can use them to pull from different directions, depending on where you grab them. That gives me enough stability to free my left leg and use it to push myself up. That is very much needed because the big red hold is so high that I cannot use it to pull myself up. I can only use it for balance for now, which means I have to rely on my left leg doing the pushing and my right arm doing the pulling. When I'm up, I can then use that same big red hold to start pulling, but the angle of it forces me to first pull myself towards the wall and then swing my way to the left. So I'm then pulling the hold from the left side, which is the easiest angle. With stable footing at a good hold for my right arm, I can finish the route with my left. The foot switch here is meant to help me balance at the end. Because I will be grabbing the end with both hands and because I have my left foot on this hold, I would be risking an uncontrolled swing to the left if I didn't switch my feet. That is solved now, which is quite easy to do on a big hold like this. It's made more doable by the 2 good holds for your hands. So you're seeing already that this route has quite some puzzle solving and interesting movement, despite it still being a relatively easy route. The blue one already starts out challenging. The starting hold is not hollow but flat on top. top, meaning you can only hang from it at a very good vertical angle. Aside from the good elements at the start, there's nothing for your feet to easily go to. Same goes for your hands, by the way. Some people think you can push yourself up on the starting hold or jump somehow, but there is another hold, the small blue one over here. That has just enough grip for you to use it to pull yourself up. The issue is getting there. First, I will have to get my feet up to balance myself, otherwise the same thing would happen that I explained earlier, but I would swing to the right this time. Then I have to switch my grip on the starting hold because it's so low, but still use it to pull upwards because there's no other option nearby. This position is just stable enough to grab onto the side of the wall, which gives me enough height to get to the blue hold. This is made more difficult because the height means that my left foot has to come off the gray element, which means I'm losing that support. The starting hold can now be used to push up with my left arm while also pushing with my right leg. That gets me to the first small hold on the top that can only be used for balance. It cannot be used to hang off of because it's angled downwards. To get on with the route I have to move left, which would mean standing on this blue hold. But standing in this position is impossible until I shift my weight and join my right arm and leg with the left. I pull upward using my right arm so I can balance on my left foot and let go with my right. Then, while balancing all my weight on my left leg and pushing with my left arm to keep stable, I can free my right hand long enough to get to the other small hold. Because I cannot see my feet, I did touch the yellow hold here. Had this been an official match, this attempt would have been disqualified. Now, I'm almost in position to stand up, but first, some physics. The earth is pulling my body mass to itself, which means it is pulling 75 kilograms of pure fence post. That means to even keep stable, I have to push up with a force of an equal 75 kilograms. Because of how the route is designed, there's no way yet to balance this weight on any other limb. But on top of that, to stabilize myself in this awkward position, I have to push with both my hands. Here, the same physics work. If I'm pushing with my hands, then I am adding to the downward force to my body weight, meaning that the harder I push to stay stable, the worse it will be for my leg, and the harder it will be for me to stand up and join the legs. This means one leg has to be strong enough to push quite a bit more than just your body weight upward. Aside from that, you need some decent core strength to not squish yourself with your downward force from above and the upward force from below. Here, my length gets in the way because I have to bend over to properly balance myself. You might think that after that we'll be rewarded with an easy ending, but we're not. The perspective of the shot makes it hard to see, but it is a long way to the last two holds and you have to get around the corner. But in this position, now pulling with my hands, I can free my left arm to reach the end hold, then get my left foot onto the other hold, which is where my length is a benefit. Then it's a last balancing act in dividing my weight over both feet to stabilize and touch the end hold. What I just all explained happens in about 40 seconds. As you can hopefully see from these examples, climbing is extremely accessible, but it can quickly start to challenge you physically and mentally. You can tackle the challenges at your own pace though, which is what makes the sport so easy to pick up. More difficult routes will be a puzzle that you will have to solve, which can be done with or without climbing partners. If you like this video and want to help the channel grow, you probably already know what you can do. If you want to comment but don't have anything to contribute, give me suggestions on what to watch. The more, the better. You are welcome to subscribe to the channel as I will be making more videos, but do consider that they will not be climbing related. So I guess you can subscribe for more anime, but not for more bouldering. Thanks for watching and see you next time.